If you joining us on the Zoom, please keep yourself muted unless called upon to speak. And if you're joining us here in the council chambers, please make sure that your phones are on silence, which I'm doing to my own. All right. The Planning and Architecture Review Commission of the City of Glendale is now in session. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag Senator, please call the roll.
Chairman Mayor Brian Kennedy,
I'm here.
Alderman Bailey,
Here.
Commissioner Seligman,
Here.
Commissioner Nelson,
Here.
Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Sean Story,
He is absent.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Here.
and Commissioner Atwood.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Much. First item on the agenda tonight is the adoption of minutes from our meeting held on May the 2nd. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, please?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Seligman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Bailey. Any discussion? Any corrections to the minutes? All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have a public hearing tonight for a map amendment for AH&S Realty LLC Olivia, doing business as Casa de Corazon, for a proposed daycare and preschool at 4600 North Port Washington Road. This is in a planned unit development zone classification, hence the need for the public hearing in order to make an amendment to the PD zoning classification. And I will turn it over to Mr. Fellows for a recommendation before we move on with the public hearing. Or if you have any additional information, I know this came before us previously, so.
Yeah, so. Not much has changed since you saw it last. There may be a few extra drawings, those types of things. I believe the public or the staff comments are the same as what you had seen prior to the scheduling of the public hearing. Those include some comments from planning, public works, and engineering. Police, fire, and inspections will probably be forthcoming with permits. We would recommend that you hold the public hearing this evening and then make a recommendation to City Council for approval of a general development plan as submitted.
Thank you. All right, well, I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to testify on the amendment to the planned unit development for 4600 North Port Washington Road? All right, second call. Is there anyone wishing to testify in the public hearing? And third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on the public hearing for the amendment to the planned unit development for 4600 North Port Washington Road? All right, at that point, I would entertain a motion from a member of the commission to close the public hearing. Moved by Commissioner Cohn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The public hearing is now closed. We did have a presentation at a previous meeting. We then scheduled the public hearing for tonight. There was a public hearing in which no one testified. So we now have a recommendation from staff that we approve the amendment for AH&S, the map amendment for AH&S Realty LLC Olivia Incorporated, doing business as Casa de Corazon, for a proposed daycare and preschool at 4600 North Port Washington Road. This would be a recommendation to the Common Council for approval. Can I get a motion to refer this to the council for approval, please? Moved by Commissioner Cohn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of recommending this to the council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Recommended to the
Yes, I believe it is, because I just
I saw the
sent it.
draft
Yes,
agenda earlier. and
we
I
moved
think
it
this
on,
was
so
there.
it will be next Monday, the 12th.
Yeah, Monday, the 12th. All
And
right,
basically that evening, you'll be scheduling a public hearing that would occur in July for city council.
right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we have another public hearing scheduled tonight. This is for a text amendment for an ordinance amending and renaming Title 13, Article K, accessory uses and structures, fences and hedges, portable storage structures and donation drop-off boxes, and amending section 13.1.142. And I will turn it over to Mr. Fellows.
Sure. So we discussed this at council as well as at the last planning and architectural review commission meeting, and staff was recommending to update the fence ordinance, provide some more clarity, make it a little bit easier for the general public to read. Some of the highlights include being a little bit more transparent. There are certain neighborhoods in Glendale that have deed restrictions, which the city has traditionally honored with 4-foot and 5-foot fences instead of what you might find as 6-foot generally. But that information was not apparent. It was actually referencing, so someone would actually have to know how to find their deed restrictions. And so we just brought that information over so it was more clear. We also, I guess the other big change is right now there's a clause in the fence ordinance that talks about fence waivers, where you go to your neighbor, ask for them to sign this waiver. They're not really waiving anything. The way that happens is some people might say no, but what they don't understand is that the ordinance actually says the only way to deny the fence permit is if the city planner determines that the fence proposed could lower property values. And that's very, like, if you talk to any real estate person, they're going to say if they have 2 identical houses and one has a fence and one doesn't, they're probably going to sell for about the same amount. The fence is not going to be that, much of a swing. So what we're recommending is that they do, I believe, did we say an acknowledgement, Ken? Is that the word we used?
Notification?
Or a notification?
Proof of notice.
Okay, proof of notice. So just basically going to your neighbor and they could create, it's kind of like what we do with the chicken ordinance is someone can just basically write all their neighbors and their addresses down and kind of like a little petition type thing, or they could have them sign on to a letter or something to that effect. And they would just gather that up, attach it to their permit, and we would process it. It would speed things up. Right now, if somebody wants to do the waiver and they want us to send it out, we have to mail it. There's extra costs, that staff time, and then if no one responds, and it just stretches processes out for 60 days sometimes. So
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any members? All right, we'll go ahead then and open the public hearing. There's a public hearing now on the text amendment for the ordinance that would amend and rename Title 13, Article K, accessory uses and structures, fences and hedges, portable storage structures, and donation drop-off boxes. Is there anyone wishing to speak in the public hearing? There's no one online, right? No. The second call, anyone wishing to speak in the public hearing? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak in the public hearing on the text amendment on fences and hedges? All right, I would entertain a motion now from the member of the commission to close the public hearing. Moved by Commissioner Cohen. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Alderman Bailey. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Public hearing is now closed. We now have a recommendation from staff that we recommend to the Common Council the ordinance that was presented to us previously and that we just held the public hearing about. Can I get a motion now to recommend the ordinance, the rewritten ordinance to the Common Council, please?
Moved.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cohn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending to the council the amended ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion. All right, we will now move on to our new business. The first item is a business use approval. This is discussion and consideration of a business use for Precision Brows. at 5225 North Ironwood Road, Suite 202. Mr. Fellows?
Sure. So Precision Browse is looking to open up in the Ironwood complex. Let me, can you share screen?
Oh, sure.
Um, yeah. There's not too much to show. But in essence, what the applicant would like to do is open up a microblading service. And so for those unfamiliar, I had to learn what this was myself. It's essentially using tattoo art to mimic eyebrows for those who wish to accentuate their existing eyebrows or to create the appearance of an eyebrow for someone who has lost them for whatever reason. And so the applicant will be doing this as sort of a side hustle in addition to her regular job. And so by appointment, it'll be throughout the week. And she'll only be seeing one client at a time.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Yes.
I'm just curious, since this involves like tattooing, does it require any sort of state licensure?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Is Ms. Green here this evening?
I don't believe.
We do have a recommendation from staff that the Planning Commission grant business use approval. I think I would like to just add that, that we make a motion to recommend business use approval, subject to verification as to whether or not it requires any state licensure and that the applicant has complied with any state licensure. Can I get a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Atwood. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Any discussion from other members of the? I don't want to be the only one talking.
I just have a
Mr. Sawyer, go ahead.
clarification. The street address given in the background is different from the street address given in the subject line and in the recommendation. So I assume that that's just a typo in background. Second line of background says 2052 North Ironwood.
Yep, and that actually wouldn't exist in Glendale anyway.
That is indeed a typo.
Okay. Yeah, because 2025 would be somewhere down in the city of Milwaukee, about what, 30 blocks south of there. So,
It's just making sure that
Yeah.
we're all on the same
yep.
page.
Okay. Any other discussion? Yeah, Commissioner Atwood?
Is there any plan to put signage up, or is this kind of going to be in more of an invisible residential business?
That's in the Ironwood Office Park. And so I don't believe there will be a standalone sign. Perhaps there will be one within the building, but as far as I understand it, the applicant doesn't intend to have anything outside of the building.
So each of those three buildings down there, they actually have a kind of a general sign, and they have little, you have to actually be in the parking lot to read it, but it actually lists, such and such lawyer, so and so, and they're just probably a couple inches, and they slide in and out. So as tenants change, they just change the panel.
All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor then of granting the business use for Precision Browse, please say aye.
I
Opposed, no. Motion. Next item is consideration of a recommendation for vacating an unimproved portion of West Fairfield Court public right-of-way to the Union Pacific Railway due to WSDOT's Interstate I-43 highway widening.
So this one's a little bit of a unique item. I can't say that you guys have ever seen something quite like this before, and I don't know if you're going to see it in the near future either. Essentially, let's see if I can make this a little bigger on your screen. As you probably know, Fairfield Drive is right here, and that's that public right of way that has these thin white lines. And Fairfield has to be moved to the north because they're going to build a new train trestle to the north of the existing train trestle. That train trestle and the railroad tracks have to be built and in operation before they can remove the existing train trestle. Therefore, the slope of this is all on a hill or a built-up man-made embankment that the train is on. So that's, well, actually, the bottom of the toe of that embankment is actually going to go into the city right away. And the railroad considers that a structure, even though it's just compacted dirt, they consider it part of the structure of the train system. And so there was a great conversation about, well, who's responsible for that? It's going into the city right away. Do we become responsible for this structure? Who's supposed to maintain it? What's going to happen down the road? And so with a lot of discussion, the decision was that what we needed to do is essentially modify the right of way so that the entire structure is on railroad property, and then our road and our facilities are on our right of way, and it's a very clear delineation between the two. So this process was discussed with Public Works, DOT, the railroad, as well as our attorney, Nathan, and this became the best solution for all parties. And so essentially, the process is to go to Planning Commission for approval, and then it has to go on to City Council for a public hearing. So after your recommendation this evening, staff will schedule a public hearing for sometime in July. And then there'd be a public hearing, and then there'd be action by City Council, and then those rights of way lines would be modified.
The only real decision for us tonight is essentially to make a recommendation to the Common Council that we, as a Planning and Architectural Review Commission, don't consider it any sort of harm to the city to give up this right of way to the railway.
Correct. And the area on the map that's on your screen now is the hash mark is the area of conversation.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there any questions?
I have a question. I don't fully understand the legalities of this, and I guess my basic question is this changing ownership or just supervisory responsibility for the land?
Ownership of the land, so the actual right of way line will change. Therefore, by changing the right of way / property line, then the second part of what you said, basically ownership and maintenance changes too.
The city is some land.
The city's giving up land and the railroad's getting more land, but the city's not getting any responsibility for any maintenance or anything with regard to the structure for the railroad.
Are you getting any compensation?
No, that was not discussed by DOT, and this is one of those things DOT didn't really take care of. So this has been one of those things that the railroad and the city brought to their attention, and we basically had to figure out how to resolve it so that both parties are good long-term, and the state DOT's kind of been a little bit, they've been slightly engaged, but they weren't taking any, it should have been, in my mind, with the planning of the freeway, it should have been addressed probably quite a while ago.
Was there any discussion that once the old railroad trestle is demolished, that the city or the water utility might pick up some of the land to the south? It's sort of an exchange here, or was it just the city giving up right of way?
So it's just really the city giving up right away. There's not really a CSM process going on. So to do that exchange with the water utility, you'd actually have to do a CSM between those two entities, because the railroad is actually a parcel. So is the water utility. In this instance, what we're basically doing is we're giving up part of the right of way and having it adjoined to the adjacent lot, which is the railroad property.
It also means the city.
Correct. Between Public Works and Carl and myself, we all thought it could be built the way DOT wanted to have it built, but then a portion of the structure would be in the public right of way. So if for some reason it started to fail, if the upper part of the embankment started to fail, the railroad would be responsible. But if that failure goes all the way down to the bottom and it now goes into the public right of way, all of a sudden we're responsible for this piece of infrastructure. And we all thought it's easier to give up a couple feet of right of way than to take ownership of a piece of infrastructure long-term that we have no idea what costs. So just give it all back to the railroad, more or less. Let them handle the structure.
feel like this is a question that's above the pay grade of the commission, but that perhaps the city councilors are interested in thinking about it. But I would just point out that this country was built after taking land from the people who lived here on giving land away to the railroads. And this would seem to continue that tradition.
That is a very, very valid point.
Sorry, I know a lot about the 19th century.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Atwood?
Yeah, the land to the south, that's, what would we envision the long-term use of that land would be? Is it gonna be just vacant for decades after that, or are there people, I don't know what is immediately to the south of this, but are
Immediately to the south is the North Shore Water Utility Plant, where our water comes from.
so, okay,
But I mean, essentially, it comes up to and abuts the property that then becomes Union Pacific Railroad. And so if we're giving away a little bit of the city land on the one side, I was just asking if there might be a spot, because at some point, the old railroad trestle is going to come down. So the
understood.
railway is going to have a wide parcel with its train tracks essentially on the northern side of that parcel. And not, and the southern part of its parcel will be unutilized,
So,
undeveloped.
Mayor, the toe of the embankment for the existing rail comes pretty close to the current property line. So if you were to trade, all of a sudden you're trading up that current embankment. They're not going to modify any of the embankment on the south side. I mean, they'll take the the trestle will come down, but the embankments will actually remain. They're only going to modify the embankment on the north side of the current embankment.
They're building a new embankment currently on the north side where they're building the
They're adding-
pillars that'll help.
We'll
that'll
call
hold
it,
the trestle.
yeah, so they're adding on to the embankment and then they're building the new actual bridge.
Okay. So it'll just be an extra wide one where the tracks are on the northern part of the embankment.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the train runs a couple times a week. It goes up to, it doesn't go to Port Washington anymore. It only goes to Sheboygan. So as long as that electric facility is, using coal, then I guess we'd see the trains, but I would think sometime in the near future, coal will stop being hauled up there. So then there might be other opportunities. And I'll mention
Trails to
too-
trails.
Yeah,
There may
rails
be
to
an opportunity to
trails.
Take it back.
And then
Will they give it back?
I
then?
will mention for those of you who live nearby, they have started to kind of toot the horn to let the construction workers that are working in that area know that the train's approaching. It's a slower moving train. So if you do hear a toot occasionally, probably a couple times a week, it's because they're trying to let the construction people know they're approaching.
And actually Union Pacific of county parks, the zip line trail. So we had to remove the railroad tracks from it to turn it into the current bike path that runs along Johnson Controls. So they have given up some property, and there may be an opportunity to take this back at some point when the Sheboygan power plant stops being a coal operated plant. So. All right, any other questions, Commissioner Nelson? Okay. You had that look with the thing, like you were gonna raise your finger.
It
Okay,
was
all right.
answered. It's fine.
All right. Did we make a motion already on this?
No.
Okay, can we get a motion then to recommend to the common council the vacating of the unapproved portion of the West Fairfield Court public right of way to Union Pacific Railroad? Moved by Commissioner Cohen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Nelson. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving or recommending to the council, please say aye.
I,
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next is discussion and consideration for site plan and architectural approval for main building design modifications and signage for Nicolay High School. Mr. Fellows.
Bring the drawings up here so you can see them. I'm actually going to do a really brief presentation, then turn it over to the school architects to discuss, because there's lots of little different elements, but essentially you saw some signage, conceptual signage. So now you're going to be looking at what the actual proposed signage would be. And then they have had some design changes since you saw this in the fall, particularly around the entrance and on another part of the one of the wings of the building. So we're just going to go through these drawings and I'll let them kind of describe them in more detail, just because I think it's going to be, they're going to do it a little quicker than I will.
Wait, at this point, the image that you're seeing is the engineering wing. That's our innovation arts. We had some donors that wanted to expand that area. It's a 12-foot expansion to the north. Basically, it's creating our autos bay separate from it was overlapping our robotics competition field on the interior. So that 12-foot additional component to the north, it's all within Nicolay property. But that basically is just giving us usable space for multiple things at the same time inside the building. It was just at a cost that we reduced early in the project, but we had some donors that came back and said, for robotics, let's make sure that this gets done. The signage is on the outside, Nicolay Union High School. That would be our proposal for the signage on that portion of the building that's facing G. Nicolay Road at the north end of our building.
Wasn't this on the prior approval?
So the additional 12 feet is something that would be new. And then I don't think we approved all signage originally. Did we have that
Yeah.
approved at the last?
So the last time we were here, this was on for approval. The difference is we're adding that 12 feet addition. The addition is more than 12 feet. We're extending the addition by 12 feet. And that's what we're bringing in front of you today.
Okay.
I'll just scroll through until tell me to stop when you. This one?
These are just elevations of that addition and that 12 feet extension to the north. Basically, where you see the Nicolay signage, the materiality didn't change, it just extended. So the glass fenestration stayed the same. It's just more metal panel and then the sign adjusted in order to get a good balance on that elevation.
So as our value engineering throughout the process, we had maintained our original entryway at Nicolay, the front entry at door 1. This is an alternate that we have accepted through the building project. So that would be a change from the original plan. That would be the new entryway to Nicolay High School at door 1 in that turnaround at the front of the building. So a more modern, updated look, cleaner look.
Bradwood?
That's okay. Just, is the portion of, if you can go back to the original screenshot that shows where it says Nicolay Union High School. And there is the, I don't remember what the previous one looked like, but it is the 12 feet, the like to the right of the LET of Nicolay there. So is that, just curious if there was a decision not to like extend the windows, or is that not even an option given the interior of that building?
The interior use of that is an autos bay at that end, so really keeping that enclosed. So we thought about the windows as well, but it really covers the robotics field, and that's what we originally had planned. So no need to extend the windows at this point, same material.
So this sheet, sessions building that we brought before you last time, the only difference here is the signage that we are showing on the building. We confirmed with the district that they would like to provide a logo to the left and then the words concessions.
It's better than the Knights conceding everything.
This is a really hard ask. I mean, it almost feels like that's an indicator sign, right? You know, like concessions. It's like, I don't know, putting something on a bathroom to indicate it's a bathroom, right? It almost seems like, does this need to be a part of our sign program? Because it's sort of interior to the property. It's not on the, yeah, okay. Is this the entrance to
This will be
the,
the ticket kiosk. So this is something new that EOA has designed. This will be one of the first of its kind. Most stadiums will have a ticket booth. with online ticket purchasing in our entire North Shore Conference. We went to ticket kiosk. So at the center of that, you'll have two iPads, that Nicolay logo that you're seeing. There's actually like a roll-up garage door type that will open up to the iPads. People can purchase tickets. People will come with tickets on their phones. Basically, you're looking at the Knight Stadium, the logo on the signage on the top that was added, so.
That's everything. The sheets that you're looking at now are just the civil drawings associated with the projects we just discussed.
So it's the change to the main school entrance, the auto repair bay, and then some of the signage. Okay. Any other questions from members of the commission? Commissioner Cohen?
Guess I twisted your arm last time. But again, this name, Nicolay Union. Was the Nicolay is Nicolay. Up on Google, it's Nicolay High School. Again, I ask, why are we necessarily using the word union? Is it required? Is it in script that it has to be?
It's not required. Technically, a Union High School is a 912 district in of itself. We are one of 10 Union Heights, 421 school districts in the state. 10 of them are Union High School districts. The legal name that we are classified under through Department of Public Instruction is Nicolay Union High School. That is the name that we are associated with legally for referendum, school board votes, all DPI reportings, Nicolay Union High School. It has often been referred to as Nicolay High School, just Nicolay. That is the official legal name. Our school board had recommended we build consistency in our branding and naming of the school and use the official name as we rebrand.
What would it take to off the name of the building?
Make it a K-12 school district.
Yeah,
Validate
I
the
mean-
four school districts.
As long as I've been here in 40 years in the city, it's always been Nicolay.
It's always been wrong. Just so you know, always been legally, it's always been Nicolay Union High School. Originally, they applied as unified high schools. Unifieds are districts that are, it's a K-12, but multiple municipalities. It's technically been wrong, and we ran into the problem as we ran the referendum. We started running Nicolay High School referendums, and they said we wouldn't get our money because it's associated to Nicolay Union High School. So we technically DPI couldn't. So we had to change all of our legal documents as we were going through referendums to make sure that everything matched. That's technically the legal name. I guess if you look at the other 9 Union High Schools in the state, they're all referred to Hartford Union High School, Arrowhead Union High School, Waterford Union High School. They're all named that way. They've been using their name properly throughout. It's just a way that the community started working with Nicolay and Nicolay High School. We've got down to the point where it was just Nicolay and people would just call it Nicolay. And they didn't even say high school. They didn't say Union High School. And we had 3 or 4 different names out there. Documents. Process, we started. Consistency.
I lose.
I would say Nicolay is correct, and that's what most of our alum and neighbors call it as well. But as we were going through the process, the board asked for some consistency as we move forward.
Question then becomes article in the paper regarding Nicolay. It should state Nicolay Union High School, correct?
Nicolay Union High School District and Nicolay Union High School are technically our legal names, technically. But as you said, for generations, people have been using Nicolay or Nicolay High School. So it's gonna be hard to break some of those habits or change that, but that's what the board asked for, some consistency, especially as we go through this process, try to help.
Anytime you have a high school with its own district, separate K-8 feet. The consolidated Mapledale, Glendale, River Hills, and Fox
think
Point
we could call
Bayside
it
and
Nicolay
Nicolay
High
into
School.
one, then it could be like the Nicolay School District and have several elementary and middle schools and, yeah.
It's a very unique, again, we're one of 10 and
Yep, yep. All right, any other questions from members of the commission? All right, well, we do have a recommendation from staff. There are subject to 8 conditions. Can I get a motion then to grant approval for the site plan and architectural approval, subject to the 8 conditions indicated by staff?
So moved.
Commissioner Atwood, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Seligman. Further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. You didn't have to change the name of the high school.
We'll be back for some landscaping next month. So-
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Cabarro. Okay, the next item is architectural review for proposed exterior modifications at 6758 North Sydney Place. This is an M1 warehouse light manufacturing office and service district. And I will turn it over to Mr. Fellows.
And do you want to do this?
Okay,
Sure.
Mr. Smith.
Sure. So the applicant owns this warehouse on Sydney Place and he wants to add modify the current garage door and add 2 more and then add a pedestrian door. And he says the new colors will match the building. It's continuing the warehouse aesthetic in a warehouse district. The building is used for, he says, personal uses for him and his family for storage. He didn't indicate this, but perhaps he's setting it up for future resale value. That's all I have and open for questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from members of the commission? All right, we have a recommendation from staff then that we grant approval for the exterior architectural modifications for the structure at 6758 North Sydney Place. Can I get a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Atwood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fernandez. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. It is approved. Next is discussion, consideration, and determination of a major or minor modification to the planned development district for Chick-fil-A at 5201 North Port Washington Road. This was a planned development district when Chick-fil-A was built. And before us today is a modification that would be either a wall or a fence of some sort along Port Washington Road. I will turn it over to Mr. Fellows.
Sure. So, Mayor, you kind of summed that up pretty well. They are looking at putting in a essentially a windbreak for the section of the building where you actually drive through and take your orders, that particular area. And I'm just scrolling through here to get to the proposal. I have to shrink it. So
It was the wall first, right?
yeah, so the original conversations with the applicant was to put in a wall that basically was masonry. It had 4 windows, and it would essentially, kind of provide a facade to that pickup window. In site plan, this is the building down in this corner. I'll blow it up just a little bit if I use the right, just so you get a better location. So this is the building. This is the drive-through. This side is the pickup lane. On the bottom of the screen is the freeway. To the north is Port Washington Road. This area is just a few feet essentially from the public sidewalk to the property line and to the pickup lane. And so that was sort of the original discussion with staff, and we were provided this particular drawing. At that time, we suggested to them that it could be a minor amendment because it architecturally looks similar to the building. It met some of the criteria for the corridor of having buildings closer to the street, that type of thing. In this instance, in the winter, they would actually on the back side of the wall, or the non-Port Washington side of the wall, they would actually put like a plastic type device that would keep the wind from coming through in the winter. And then a couple days later, they did some revisions and they requested to do a windscreen. This is what the windscreen would look like. It's basically an aluminum like window system or channeling system, and then there's a mesh screen provided all the way along there. In the other modifications that I should let you know about, there's 2 others. There's currently a door right in this location. If you follow my cursor, I think it's showing up on your screen. And that's the pickup window for DoorDash and those other types of services. The door has to open and close, and so it they found it being very cumbersome. So what they'd like to actually do is put in a pickup window that they can just slide, hand the items to the drivers, and it'll be a little bit better. And then they'd like to put a canopy which would match the other canopies on the building that would provide some shade and rain and wind and other climate protection.
There would no longer be any door on the east side of the building, like emergency exit wise for the people who work inside.
So there's doors on the other side, and there's actually on the drive-through side, they're actually not windows, they're actually doors. So the entire door actually opens. So those would be the fire exits and that. And then there is a door. So these are two of the doors. There's the door on the back. And let me think here, what's this one? That's the west side, doesn't have that's not really the west.
That's a good question.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to sort of clarify what's happening in these drawings, the part that has like the little bubble around it is the
Right.
modifications.
correct, yes, the only, everything that's not bubbled is existing, only the things within the bubble are the changes. So you can see on this instance, there's the canopy here and here. That's the door on that elevation. And then you have this screening device that they're proposing in that location. Staff originally told them they felt that the brick veneer wall would be a minor modification to the planned development district. With the revisions, we felt that was a substantial change. It doesn't really go with, having a facade along the street, those types of things. It's more utilitarian. And so we were suggesting that's more of a major amendment. I'm not sure what council or planning commission feel about either option. Just as a reminder, a minor amendment is taken care of at planning commission. So you could determine it's a minor amendment and then make a motion for approval, and it doesn't go anywhere else. It's just taken care of. With regard to if you determine it's a major amendment, they will have to go back to city council for an initial appearance, come back to planning commission for a public hearing, then go back to city council for those hearings, and then do an amendment to the development agreement. So it's a few months of process to approve a major amendment.
So my first thought is I don't deem the changes to, in my personal opinion, I don't deem the changes to be major amendments if they were to be building the wall and doing the pickup window with the canopy. I do view actually creating a screened fence as a major amendment. We don't have any fencing at all in any of the businesses along Port Washington Road. And so that to me would be a major change to the consistency that we have kept along Port Washington Road. Whereas the wall looks like a wall of a building, it doesn't come across as like a fence. So I would agree with staff that would be more of a minor amendment. The changes, the pickup window and the canopy are a minor amendment, and doing a wall that is consistent with the other architecture and doesn't come across looking like a fence would also be consistent with a minor amendment and consistent with the development along Port Washington Road. But I think creating a fence-like structure looks, I don't know that I like that look, and I don't think it's consistent with everything else we've approved along Port Washington Road in the last decade. So I'll open up to members of the commission. Go ahead, Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And then I have a question regarding, two questions, I guess, but one, whatever, we'll find out. So do we know if they are open to the wall or the mesh, or is there a preference for one or the other?
So they originally sent me the first drawing, then they sent me the second drawing. When we were going to do the report, I said, oh, you changed it. Because I originally had said, could you just make the air bubble around the items and resubmit, just so it's clear for everyone to know what the changes were. And then they changed it. And so we had a conversation, and they went back to their client and they said they would like to move forward with whatever the results of your approval would be with regard to, we'll call it the fence version. So they did indicate that they would like to hear your opinion on that. So
So then my follow-up question is, because I do agree with Mayor, is there an opportunity or a time to, like, is it possible that we can approve one portion as minor and another portion as major? Like if we looked at the mesh and said that was a major change and then the rest are minor, is that an option?
Oh, you're referring to, yeah, so could you break, could you say that the canopy and the door is a minor modification or as a major, is a
Minor?
minor modification and the other ones are major? Yeah, I suppose you could do that.
Up the picture of the first. Is that, looking at that, looks like it's a wall built with glass that you can see through.
So it is a wall with face brick on it, and it has a window system in it with no glass. And then if I zoom in enough to be able to read the notation, it says detachable screen installed on every opening mounted to the back side of the wall. So there would be a screen on each of these items. So there will be a screen or a mesh thing to kind of break the wind, but it would be more like, you still have the wall. I guess I would probably associate it more as if you had screens on your house, so that it's going to definitely, when you drive down the road, it's probably going to look at a glance. I would say the screen is going to look more like a tinted window than it will be like, oh, I'm seeing all the way through, because that mesh is going to a little bit disrupt your view. So it's probably going to look more like a tinted window or maybe shades down or something like that, because you're not going to just have that clarity all the way through.
They discussed permanent fixture instead of detachable screen. What I'm thinking is all of a sudden out of 12, 14, 16, 12, 24, 48 panels.
It was my understanding that there would be something they could attach on the back of it in the winter months that would help stop like the cold wind from the staff persons who are
So-
outside.
Yeah, so like this particular winter, what they did was they put up a structure at a temporary structure, and then they put up this it was part canvas, part clear plastic that basically protected the area from the wind and the snow and that sort of thing. So that's sort of the same concept, except on a structural basis with a wall. I'm not sure how that would, the detail of this option. It also says detachable screen. I think when they say screen, I
You're
think they're-
representing Chick-fil-A? Oh, okay, perfect. Oh, sorry. Yeah, when I have a seat, yeah. If you could just state your name, and when you
just
talk, you get
talking.
to speak directly into the microphone.
Of course, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Hi, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, Jason Hill, Development and Construction, Chick-fil-A. So I'm coming to a little bit with our tail between our legs. There was a lot of work done on the wall piece of it from folks who didn't have background on what it was like to do the development of this particular site. So as you may know, this site is an historical, excuse me, fill site. And so we had a multitude of structural, soils, environmental issues that we were dealing with. And because of that, we had just astronomical budget overruns on this site. And so the wall structure came through, and I got it literally the day that it was going to be submitted. And then so someone with background on what it took to develop the site finally looks at it and realizes that it's going to take a lot of funds to put together a structure like that, just with all the underlying soils conditions, environmental conditions, things of that nature, not to mention, of course, all the materials that it will take to build that structure. So we sort of sent them back to the drawing board and said, hey, what else can we do that would provide a screen type situation that looks cohesive with the rest of the site amenities? And so that's how the second design came around. Not as beefy from a structural standpoint, so it doesn't require quite the extent of foundation requirements. We're hopeful that it also would not require us to do geopiers, which is what we use to support all the other structures on site because of just the poor soils out there. And we're working in a very limited area that's previously been developed. And so it's got, storm sewer structures running right next to it. And so we're trying to minimize the footprint and transparently, like trying to save costs on something like this. So that's where we're at right now. To answer a few of the questions that you've asked related to the makeup of this particular design. So right now it's a perforated panel. So during the summer months, obviously the sort of screen on the back side of it would not be installed, but there's perforations in the panels that would allow airflow throughout. We're open to, suggestions on what that material can be. We sort of took the approach of it serves two purposes. It's a windscreen, but then it's also a screen of some of the activity that's going on behind it as well. We're open to, so I was actually driving here and I noticed several of the fences on the bridges throughout Milwaukee have a very similar look to this. One exception is that they've got more like a larger sort of wire mesh in between. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it if you driven around Milwaukee. We'd be open to something like that as well. But this provides really more of a visual screen than the alternative, which is why we chose this. And then it obviously, during the winter, we could put those same panels on the back of it to fully block the wind so we can have folks out in the drive-through during different types of weather conditions. So that's kind of been the evolution of this. So I just wanted to be fully transparent with you of
Sure.
where we're coming from on this.
And just, I guess, to give you a little background, in the last 25 years, anything built along Port Washington Road has been built at the street. So if you, for example, you notice Cops is parking lot and Cops is set back. Cops is about 40 years old, 45 years old, that building.
Okay.
There was a previous building, it burned down, they rebuilt it. Since, but anything built newer than that. So if you look at, the FedEx store on the corner, if you look at the Cousin Subs and the Noodles, you look at the Crab Shack, all those has been to try and, you're even going further up, where the Panera is. It's to put the buildings further along, right, as close to the road as possible and hide the parking behind. That's been what we've tried to achieve along Port Washington Road. Even on the other side of the street, you'll notice the things that were built that are newer. The Taco Bell, for example, is flush with the street and, there's a drive-through and there's very little parking. But yet some of the other things that are older, like the Arby's is actually fairly new, but they built on the site of a Burger King. The Burger King already had the footprint, so they just essentially scraped it and built a new building right on top of it. That's why it's set back, but the Burger King was built in the 70s. So anything built in the last 25 years, we have tried to push to move things toward the street and to hide the parking behind. Now, I know you have very limited parking because it's primarily a drive-through at the Chick-fil-A, but for consistency along Port, anything that looks like a building or a structure along the street would be a minor amendment to this PD because it's consistent with everything we've been approving in the last 25 years. A fence, there are no fences at all. So even this screen that you're proposing, I understand the purpose behind it, and I certainly, would want to protect the workers who are there, in the winter time from, cold winds blowing on them. But it's still a fence. If you drive up and down Port Washington Road, you're not going to see any fences at all. As a matter of fact, you're going to see the structures built closer to the street. And that's why I offered the opinion earlier that if you were looking to build that wall-like structure that basically looks like a building, I know that's more expensive. And obviously you may have some structural issues you're going to have to deal with in terms of stability and building on top of what was once, landfill. That would still be consistent because it looks like building, right? It's brick and mortar and it's flush with the street. The fence, I think, is going to end up, my recommendation, if you want the fence, is we're going to consider that a major amendment, send it back to the Common Council, and you're probably looking at a 3 to 5 month process by the time we go through all the public hearings. And even then, there's no guarantee that the Common Council is going to approve a major amendment with the fence because that changes our design that we have held out for the rest of Port Washington Road. And frankly, the pet store across the street, if somebody came in buying that property and wanted to raise it and build something new, that new property would be built at the street with the parking behind. That's what we've been pushing for. So I've been mayor for 8 years. This was what I inherited and what we've been consistent with. So since the time I've been mayor, the Noodles and Cousins was built. It was built consistent with that, with the parking behind. The Taco Bell was built. They actually moved the new building, closer to the street and, everything behind it. So those things that have come in recent years, we've just been consistent with the design standards for Port Washington Road that have been in effect since about the mid-90s. So I think that's the concern raised here. I understand where you're coming from. I'm just saying that if you really are insistent it has to be this screen, which basically is a fence, then that's going to be a major amendment because it's going to have the common council have to approve making a change to our design specifications for all of Port Washington road structures. Does that make
Understood.
sense?
It does. It does. Might there be a way to come to a common ground, meaning could we do a structure similar to this, but make it look less like a fence? Like without incorporating all of the heavier structure elements that really punch up the cost and the underground, structure to support it.
Well, it was you. I mean, you're an architect. Or an
I am
engineer?
not. I am
Okay.
not.
There are a lot of facade materials that come before us.
Mhm.
Brick and mortar is going to be heavier.
Right.
Right, there's a lot of lightweight facade that could look like brick and mortar or could imitate the structures,
Mhm.
but not carry the same level of weight. If you wanted to come back with a redesign of that screening process that looks like with brick and mortar, but maybe is made with lighter materials, then that I think I would certainly be
Maybe a
open to.
metal panel with the same kind of color tone. That might be an option. I was gonna suggest maybe a portion of it could be a knee wall. And then another portion might be metal panels that look like a window. I'm not sure what your weight load and all that is, but maybe that might, maybe you can figure out what the foundation is allowed and that might more influence what happens above, but
Yeah,
I would say different material choices might be good things to consider from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking we could make it look more like the window panels you see on the wall. But using different materials to accomplish that.
If you could make it look more like the brick and mortar structure, even if it's not made with brick and mortar, there's other, fabricated materials you can use that still kind of look like that.
Yeah.
Then that would look consistent, like it's a piece of the building.
Sure.
They make a thin, instead of your standard brick that's, 3 inches wide, they make a thin one that actually is more, it's like a thick tile more or less.
Right.
That could have less weight that might lessen the foundation impact.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely take a look at some different options and weigh like which direction we would like to proceed. I obviously would rather not go through a 3 to 5 month process for something like this.
We have several things here, right? So it's the existing entry door, the inclusion of the window and the canopy. We could have a motion tonight to consider those minor amendments and approve those. And then you could come back next month with a redesign of something. You could work with staff. John has a really good understanding of the kinds of things that we would approve. He could work with you on that and you could come back to us next month and then we could approve something. One thing I do have a question though. I understand obviously wanting to protect the workers that are there, but I'm also a little concerned about some of the visibility, just from a public safety perspective.
Of course.
One of the things that, right now it is open, right? So if there is any sort of activity, I know like a shooting, for example, right? People can see, like police can see there's access. I want to make sure that whatever we do there also keeps that public safety aspect in mind too,
Okay.
that there's still some visibility, for police driving by. For example, someone could be hiding behind a wall and the police driving by wouldn't even see them. So that is also a concern as you're working on a redesign.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Commissioner Cohn?
I just had an idea, looking at this, thinking, and what John said, maybe a solid panel on the bottom and maybe a window system like a house where you open and it goes up and it stays up. So they just put it down, because my question for you, out of this panel, where would you store the sheets that you take off? Whereas on a window system, it goes up and it stays up. Now you still have a glass on top, a solid on the bottom, and screen in the middle for air through in the summer.
That's a good point. We would have to have a place to store that, and I don't think that's been fully thought through. I'm assuming Ryan, our operator, had, plans to store the temporary one that we have up now. Long story behind why that doesn't work, but
It's a very small building and we remember the tour when
Yes.
it opened, right?
yes,
It is meant to be, we're just preparing food and putting it in cars.
you got it.
There's really not much room for anything.
That's right.
Yeah. Commissioner Seligman, you had a point?
Yeah, I'm looking at the diagram on the left, Mr. Fellows. If I understand the setup, the staff are delivering food to cars in the top part of the top part of the picture.
Bottom,
Bottom.
Bottom, that's right.
between the
They're-
restaurant and the freeway.
They're taking orders on the top
And
side.
so you have staff standing outside there. And then the staff are outside on the other side, the bottom part of the picture as well to deliver.
They're basically going in and out of that door to grab meals and then bring them out to the cars.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would it be possible to reorganize the setup so that the orders were taken on the north side of the building?
Unfortunately, no, because the food all comes out on the south end. And so like the way the production line works, all the food flows through the kitchen and comes out on that, well, I guess it's the west side, through that door. So in order to flip flop that, everything would basically have to be reversed.
I'm
There are no
not
doors on the other side.
Correct.
just
Currently, there
flip-
are no doors on the other side as well.
flip-flopping, but moving 90 degrees, just one of those stations. But I think that it sounds like you're architecturally already set so that you can't have the workers at the north end of the building taking the orders.
We are, and it would actually require the flow to be reversed on the site. And then like, let's just say that we're not having team members outside, it's too cold, whatever the case may be. Then as you pull up as a driver, your passenger side, that would then be like where the food would come out. Right, so it would just create a unusual circumstance in that regard. You're welcome.
Any other questions, from members of the commission? All right, so before us tonight is two things to consider. One is what is a major modification and what is a minor modification? I would like to ask for a motion that we consider a minor modification, the following items, and then approve those items to move forward. And that would be the modification of the existing entry door on the east elevation to the pickup window for online orders. The modification of the canopy area to add a full-scale canopy to the paved area to provide sun, wind, and weather coverage for those waiting to pick up online orders. So those two items. And then the landscaping would also be a minor modification. So can I get a motion then that would consider those minor modifications and move approval on them? Moved by Commissioner Cohen. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Nelson. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of considering those three items, minor modifications, and moving them for approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, before we would have another motion, do you want to withdraw the screen at this point and come back to us with another? Because if we have a motion that considers it a major modification, it's going to refer it to the common council. And then we have to start that whole lengthy process.
So just so I understand what the alternative would be, if I say no to that, which I'm inclined to do. And let's say we change our minds later and say, no, we really want to stick with this. Let's push it through as a major. Do we have to come back to do that, or can it be put on a council meeting?
So I guess we could make a motion that would consider what has been proposed as a fence a major modification.
Okay,
But we would be open to an additional, to a separate proposal that could go back to the plan commission next month.
yes,
But if you want to move forward with that fence, it's going to go to it's going to go to the common council and you're going to start a lengthy process
yes.
that, I mean, I'm just giving it, I don't know that the common council will approve making a major design modification, because once we approve a fence for one, we then have to start approving fences for others.
Sure.
And so I think you're gonna have a really hard sell to get the common council. I'm only one vote out of 7 there, but I think you're gonna have a hard sell getting a majority there that would approve the approval of what would amount to a fence.
Sure.
So I guess then we can ask for a motion then. Can I get a motion that considers the proposed fencing screen a major modification, but that the plan commission is open to alternatives that could be brought back to staff and come before the plan commission?
I'm not understanding those process, because I thought you told Mr. Hill that if we said it was a major modification, that would trigger all the subsequent steps. I'm understanding Mr. Hill to ask us more for a sense of the commission. Could we have a motion that would be like, the sense of the commission is this would be a major modification?
Well, if I'm asking for a motion, if that would approve, that would be the sense of the commission.
Well, what I'm trying to parse here is the difference between making a vote that would then trigger the rest of the process, the 5-month process, and a vote that would say, yeah, we understand this is a major modification. It might take them more than a month to figure out what to do with the screen, and they don't want to trigger the rest of the process.
Right, so what I was offering was something that it sort of allowed both options.
Okay,
We would consider it a major modification if they want to go with the existing screen, which they could withdraw at any time. But we are open as a plan commission to alternatives coming back to the plan commission. But this screen wouldn't come back to the plan commission unless it went through the process at the common council first.
What I would suggest is, if you wanted to keep both options open, I would say you would vote for this to be a major modification. It would end up on city council for them to have their initial review next week. Then it would return to the planning commission in July. If tonight you told staff to schedule a public hearing in July, we could do that. Otherwise, it would come back in July to planning commission to schedule the public hearing, which would then be in August. You'd make your recommendation in August. It would go to city council. Then August, September, they would have their public hearings, September, October. So that would kind of do that track. If they wanted to work with staff for the next 30 days or 45 days to come up with an alternative option, what I would say is they would just reapply as a new item. That would show up at the, whatever the next appropriate planning commission is. You'd look at that. And if for some reason you felt like, oh, that's a minor modification, we're willing to approve that, we'd have 2 applications in process. You could approve the minor modification, and then they would just basically pull the major modification that's going down the road from that perspective. So it's possible at some point we're going to have like these duplicative processes. That might get a little confusing what we're actually talking about, but that's what I would suggest, that they have that would keep the most options available, I guess.
A motion just to simply consider this a major modification, period.
Correct. And then it would go to city council next week for their initial just consideration. They'd send it back to you. If you wanted to save a bit of time, you could direct staff to schedule a public hearing now, or you
We
could.
can't until the council refers it to us, because that would be the council referring
Correct.
a major modification to us.
Yeah.
So we can't do that until July.
Yeah, so then you'd be in August.
Yeah.
I would like to try to help simplify this
Sure.
for you guys. I will just say that I'll just work with staff on this on a better solution rather than, I didn't realize it would have to go to council so quickly. I thought maybe we had a month to kind of make up our minds, and I'd rather not put you guys through all of that.
Part of it is because this meeting is on the first Tuesday of the month.
Yes,
We have tried to, in order to streamline the processes for our business community.
which is normally
we-
great.
Right, if we approve something tonight, it goes to, he'll give it to the city administrator in the morning. The agenda gets finalized tomorrow, and it's on Monday's common council meeting.
Yeah, which is awesome. I
Right.
mean, if I was doing a new store, I'd love that process. So, which is
Yeah.
how it went the first time we went through this, which is
Yeah.
great. So.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is we just table the second part till next month, period. No major, no minor, no nothing, and let them work with you.
I like
That's a
that.
great option too.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to make a motion then to table?
Motion to table,
Okay.
second part.
The motion to table the screen proposal.
Correct.
Okay. Can I get a second to that, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner, moved by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor then of postponing the vote on the screen that was proposed for our meeting on July the 11th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One
And we
more.
are meeting on the first Tuesday next month because it's the 4th of July.
Okay,
Our meeting will be on the 11th, so.
fair enough.
Yeah.
One quick point of clarification. So for the parts that were approved as part of the minor amendment, is this it?
Yep.
So we're good to go
Work
on
with him to
those?
get permits.
Okay.
You can start building that pickup window and the canopy and,
Uh-huh.
yep,
Okay, great.
and
All right.
landscaping as well. So
Oh, got it. Okay. I
Yep.
may postpone that though till we
Right,
have
if
the
you're
wall
gonna-
done.
if you're not sure what you're gonna build along,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
what kind of landscape, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
But we
Okay.
did approve the landscaping already, so
Great, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Sure.
for the great discussion tonight. Appreciate
Yep.
it.
thank you. And sorry, I didn't realize you were. with
Hey, it's
Chick-fil-A.
okay. It's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, the next item is discussion, consideration, and determination of a major or minor modification to the Plan Development District for John Belinsky and Glenn Feber, 4629 North Port Washington Road. This is a Plan Development District. Currently, it is the Solly's property. Mr. Belinsky has submitted under our ordinance that permits up to 5 digital signs in the city of Glendale. They can be adjacent to or south of Glendale Avenue to the southern part of the city. So there's basically only one area. Mr. Belinsky already has one sign that's on the west side of the freeway, sort of across from the Home Depot. He's proposing to have another one that would be behind Solly's. So he's here before us tonight for us to, because this is a planned development district, the city has to determine whether that's a major or minor modification. And then, so I guess, Mr. Fellows, you want to?
Sure, if I may, Mayor, I'd like to suggest too that you might want to, in the conversation, just discuss items, the one you just mentioned, which is item F. Item G is the actual sign. We're bringing that to the Planning Commission. Per the ordinance, it does allow planning staff to reference any signs up to you if we so choose. So we are doing that. So items F and G are very similar. They're two different processes, as the mayor indicated. So the first one is for the modification of the planned development district. This was approved. Solly's redevelopment goes back probably 23, 24 years ago, early 2000s, something to that effect. And Mr. Belinsky is looking to make the modification with the sign. I'm gonna pull up the document and share it to the screen so that you can see it here. So on your screen is sort of a map. So it's Glendale Avenue here. Solly Sprecher is kind of kitty corner on the other side of the freeway. The item that we talked about earlier tonight with the daycare, 4600 is across the street. This is sort of the location. So this is at Glendale Avenue looking north. This is the children's building in the background. Solly's, the back of Solly's is to the right of your screen. And this would be the digital billboard area. And so with this, staff is recommending this be a minor modification to the planned development district. The next steps, if Planning Commission does make that recommendation, it would go to City Council. City Council will approve a development agreement, as well as there's another agreement with Mr. Belinsky that would be processed next Monday. We would go forward with that. And so it's a fairly simple, straightforward minor amendment from that perspective. And I'm just going to kind of stop there because we can talk more about the design of the sign and stuff like that under the next item.
And the reason I believe that this would be considered a minor amendment is the Common Council has changed the city ordinance regarding digital billboards. We said that we would permit 5. They had to be in an M1 or a PD. So those would be approved uses within an M1 or a PD zone. And they had to be adjacent to or south of Glendale Avenue. So essentially, this is a property adjacent to.
And adjacent to the freeway.
And adjacent to it has to also be adjacent to the freeway. Then the DOT has requirements along the freeway, but we don't govern those. Those are governed by the DOT. So the proposal before us tonight is one, to deem this a minor amendment, which I would agree with staff. It is a minor amendment to the PD because it is fully consistent with usages that have been approved for plan developments as well as M1s per the Common Council. And then the sign is consistent with. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Fuchs, Mr. Blinsky? You'll need to speak into the microphone though, please.
Didn't do it when I worked here. Why would I start now? Actually, I should start by saying it was worth coming back just to hear Fred concede something so fast. I thought I was in the wrong
Excuse
city.
me, on the record, I used to like you.
I lose. No, I don't have
You
anything to,
conceded nothing apparently.
I don't have anything to add other than that. I think one additional reason this would be a minor amendment is the essential use of that property for Solly's remains. It's not a PUD where you okayed a industrial use and now it's going to be an apartment complex. The essential use Solly's remains, your ordinances as though you created an accessory use. So I would hope we're all on the same. He's still old enough to quit when I think we might be ahead.
Okay. So any questions or comments first from members of the commission? All right, so, oh, sorry.
I had
go
a
ahead,
I have a
Commissioner
question.
Sullivan.
So all the stuff about the title and the clear title is a kind of a red herring. It's not relevant to what we're being asked to decide.
No,
That's a different site.
Okay.
That's why he looked for this location. And frankly, the application as it was written was before you changed your ordinance. So you have maybe more than you needed, but
It was an awful lot and confusing, for sure.
all right, can we get a motion then to deem this a minor amendment to the plan development agreements? Because we got two separate items, so we'll do F first. A motion then to deem the inclusion of the digital billboard sign at 4629 North Port Washington Road, a minor amendment to the plan development agreement.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fernandez. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is the consideration of the sign itself now at 4629 North Port Washington Road. We do have the drawings that were submitted. Any questions from members of the commission? Okay, so we only allow up to 5 in the city of Glendale. So, as I spoke with Mr. Fellows about this a while back, I said, because these are big signs, there's only 5 we're going to allow. I wanted them to come to the plan commission. So just so we can, I mean, granted, there's only a limited space between Capitol Drive and Glendale Avenue where they can be, and they have to be at least 500 feet apart. And they have to be like within a certain number of feet of the freeway. There's a whole bunch of restrictions that we put on it as well as the DOT. So
just a brief discussion about the particular sign in front of you. So Mr. Valinsky and I have talked about the architectural quality of the billboard with the geometric patterns. So these are concepts at this point. It will have to go to a structural engineer so that they make sure that these components of the sign, withstand the wind and all those types of things. So he and I talked the other day, and he would like it, if possible, rather than having to come back to Planning Commission for the final, that Planning Commission approve this in concept, work with staff. He can go work with his engineer for 30, 60 days, come back, and if it's substantially similar, we would issue the permit. If for some reason he comes back and, it's widely different looking, then we would bring it back to you if that's kind of how the engineers might respond back to him. But I think he's pretty confident the intent would be able to be implemented. So you basically have some geometric patterns that would be on the north and south side of the sign. And then just also, since it's a V-shaped sign, the east side facing Port Washington Road would actually have like a screening device, so you wouldn't be looking into the structural components of the sign. So at least if you are walking along Port Washington Road, kind of looked between Solly's and
Not looking at the
Children's-
backside of two
you-
really big
you'd-
TV monitors.
Correct. You'd kind of, it would have some design of some sort.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So we do have a recommendation from staff for a motion subject to the 5 conditions that Mr. Fellows just laid out for us. Commissioner Cohen?
Question. Will this be sign information be changing periodically or daily or because there is don't we have, and didn't we in the past have limitations on minimums and maximums?
I think it's 6 or 8 seconds. What's the DOT? It's the DOT requirement, right? That you can't change, they can't flash for a certain number of seconds. Yeah, Mr. Blinsky?
That's correct. It's 8 seconds per the DOT regulations.
Will you be at or longer? Up there longer before changing?
Exactly 8.
And we did write the city ordinance to conform with the DOT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Commissioner Seligman, go ahead.
Mayor, you said the city council approved a maximum of 5 for the city. What number would this be?
This will be number 2.
Number 2, that's what I. thought.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
then right afterwards, there's another one for number 3.
Okay,
And 4 and 5 will come next month. And then,
there's
you
a
want-
land rush
and then you, want- oh, there was a land rush, yeah. Mhm.
and with the early 20th century.
In 2 days.
Yeah.
And there was not complete applications and some were complete and yeah.
All right, can we get so we get a motion then to approve this sign behind Solly's 4629 Northport Washington Road, subject to the 5 conditions outlined by staff?
Moved.
By Commissioner Cohen, is there a second? Second by Alderman Bailey. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving, say aye.
Right.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
I had a
So-
quick question, Mayor.
Yeah.
Based on how you phrase that motion, I think that also picks up Mr. Fellow's suggestion that if the engineers tweak this but don't change it, it's handled.
Yeah,
by
it's actually,
staff.
that was in the 5 conditions
The
he had in
5,
our
yeah.
memo to us, so, yeah, absolutely. All right, so there is a proposal for another one. This one is just north of the Home Depot on the east side of the freeway. This isn't a piece of property. Oh, yeah, you got it
The
there?
map's wrong. But that's okay.
Okay, there. So it's in a piece of property that's essentially just south of Malio and Maki, just north of the Home Depot. And this one, it does not, this isn't an M1. So when we approve it tonight, it's done. And Mr. Fellows can
The only thing that's waiting on this one is the CSM, which you did. Mr. Monroe resubmitted his CSM, so it didn't have the issues with Mr. Maki. So a couple months ago, you approved that revised CSM. It's because it's adjacent to Milwaukee. It had to go back to Milwaukee, so we're waiting for them to process and then it would be recorded. So once that's all complete, then the transaction between Mr. Belinsky and Mr. Monroe could happen, that sort of thing. So we're just getting this approved now so that once all that other paperwork gets taken care of, things can move forward.
okay.
And if I could add to that, Mayor, and it relates to the idea that we had to wait for clearer title. Mr. Belinsky has had for some time an easement over Monroe's property. If he doesn't need to reconvey the Monroe property to the city, all that stuff that I proved the point about lawyers being too wordy that was in the application, that all falls aside. He's already got it.
The unique thing about this particular sign is that there's actually 2 phases. So phase 1 has the pole mounted because right now the DOT has a limited easement for construction of the freeway. So the pole, the reds on your screen, the red proposal is basically a pole with the sign cantilevered to the east. And then once the freeway and everything's complete, then Mr. Belinsky will have the sign panels switched and it will cantilever towards the west.
So the pole itself won't move, just the
Correct.
monitors will move over.
Yes.
Okay.
This is one sided.
The double-sided sign.
Architecturally, they're proposing he provided just the one picture, but it would be the same kind of architectural design as the one at Solly's.
Okay. So we do have a recommendation from staff to approve the digital billboard, subject to 5 conditions that are outlined in the memo. So can I get a motion to approve, please? Moved by Commissioner Cohn. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Bailey. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the sign at 4189 Northport Washington Road, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we just have one last item. While it isn't listed as an action item, technically, by city ordinance, the Plan Commission must meet on the first Tuesday of the month unless we make a motion to move it. So I don't want to meet on the 4th of July. I want to be watching fireworks. So can we get a motion to hold the Planning and Architecture Review Commission meeting in July on July the 11th, please? Moved by Commissioner Cohn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor of moving the meeting to July 11th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Here,
Yeah.
one other point of comment, I guess. In your staff reports, we're starting to use some hyperlinks because our code of ordinances is now online, and we can actually put hyperlinks so that you can actually go directly to the ordinance. So feel free to use those hyperlinks. And if, as you're reading reports, if you're like, oh, I really wish they would have given me a hyperlink because I really would like to know more about XYZ, let Ken or I know, and we'd be glad to start putting more hyperlinks into different things. So you could have as many resources as possible. So just let us know.
All right, we will. Any other announcements or anything? Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Commissioner Cohn. All those in favor of adjourning, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We stand adjourned, and just everybody wave hi to Commissioner Story, who did join us. All right. Thanks, everybody. We stand adjourned. So when Carl asked me which one I wanted, I mentioned that. He goes, "Well, we'll replace it." This is divided by the city.
Yeah, this is my $1,500.
Yeah, so, but, well, really.